We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
we're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Dewbs & Co, the show where we'll get into some of the things that have got you talking today. Now, another day and another report about child sexual exploitation, or grooming gangs, as I like to call them. We just go around in these circles all the time, don't we? Yet another police force has been failing these kids. Tell us something we don't know. And you guessed it, pretty much zero accountability again. And also, get this, apparently all of these problems, they're almost yesterday's news. It's not a problem today. I don't really believe that though, do you? I'll be talking to Maggie Oliver, the legend that is Maggie Oliver, about that, a lady I respect very much, who's done great work, as you will be familiar with when it comes to this stuff. And whatever side of the fence you sit on when it comes to politics, we should all admit and concede that you need to have a very strong, very effective opposition party. So I'm asking you tonight, is the Labour Party it? I'll be talking to Stephen Kinnick about that. And human rights, you know, who should be the boss when it comes to this? Which is the superior voice? The British Bill of Rights, that is what the Tories are trying to push through as we speak, because apparently that is where the buck should stop with us, not the pesky European Court of Human Rights. Campaigners are furious about it. No surprise there. What do you make of it all? We'll have all of that to come, but first let's have a look at the latest news headlines.
Good evening from the GB Newsroom. I'm Tamsin Roberts. The RMT says tomorrow's rail strike will go ahead after talks finish today without an agreement. The unions accuse Transport Secretary Grant Shapps of wrecking negotiations. The RMT says it'll continue with industrial action until it reaches a settlement over job security and pay. Just 60% of trains are running today, despite there being no official strike, with some operators ending services earlier than usual ahead of another strike tomorrow. Inflation has hit its highest level in 40 years, climbing to 9.1% in May, up from 9% in April. The rising cost of food and non-alcoholic goods were the main driver, further squeezing household budgets. Last week, the Bank of England warned inflation was likely to peak at more than 11% in October. The Labour leader has gone head-to-head with the Prime Minister as voters prepare to go to the polls for two crucial by-elections. Sir Keir Starmer accused Boris Johnson of failing to prevent this week's national rail strikes by refusing to meet with unions and operators as the country deals with the biggest walkout by train staff in 3 decades. The Labour leader said the Prime Minister is only interested in blaming everyone else.
The Prime Minister of this country and his Transport Secretary haven't attended a single meeting, held a conversation or lifted a finger to stop these strikes. So rather than blame everyone else, why doesn't he do his job, get round the table and get the trains running?
Boris Johnson responded by saying the Labour leader is in the pocket of the unions.
He strikes, as he knows, it is up to the railway companies to negotiate. That is their job. We know why he takes the line he does. We know why he won't condemn the strikes. We know why even now he hasn't got the gumption to call out his MPs who are going out to support the pickets, Mr. Speaker. The reason his authority is on the line in this matter is that they take £10 million from the unions, Mr. Speaker.
Wiltshire police are investigating the death of a soldier who was killed during a training exercise on Salisbury Plain. The 26-year-old man sustained head injuries after he was involved in a collision with a Warrior armoured vehicle yesterday morning. He's been identified as a member of 5th Battalion, the Rifles. The Deputy Prime Minister has outlined new legislation which gives the UK power to override rulings by the European Court of Human Rights. It's after the court blocked the first deportation flight carrying asylum seekers to Rwanda last week. Dominic Raab told MPs the UK's new Bill of Rights will place ultimate legal power in the hands of the UK's Supreme Court. A national incident has been declared after polio was detected in sewage samples in London. The virus, which was officially eradicated in the UK in 2003, was discovered at a treatment works, which serves 4 million people in the north and east of the capital. The UK Health Security Agency is urging members of the public to ensure their vaccines are up to date. Whilst the risk of contamination is low, people are being warned the virus can cause paralysis and in rare cases be fatal. An earthquake in eastern Afghanistan is thought to have killed at least 1,000 people. A local official says a further 1,500 people have also been injured. The 6.1 magnitude quake struck early this morning, reducing homes to rubble. Rescue operations are underway, but it's feared the death toll will continue to rise as emergency services reach remote villages. The organiser of Glastonbury Festival, Emily Evis, says it's amazing to see people back after a 3-year break due to the pandemic. Festival goers queued from the early hours to be among the first on site at Worthy Farm in Somerset, whilst others suffered travel delays following yesterday's rail strike. The event, which officially opened this morning, is celebrating its 50th anniversary, with acts including Sir Paul McCartney and Ukraine's Eurovision Song Contest winners. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Michelle and Dewbs & Co.
Thanks for that. Well, keeping me company until 7 o'clock tonight. We've got my panel, former editor of the Sun newspaper, Kelvin McKenzie, political commentator Joe Phillips, and journalist and author Harriet Sargent. Good evening to you three. And you know the drill on Dewbs & Co, don't you? It's not just about us and our thoughts, it's about you at home and yours. What's on your mind tonight? What do you think about all the stories we'll be discussing, and whatever else, quite frankly, is on your mind? You can get in touch with me on the email gbviews@gbnews.uk is the email address. You can tweet me at gbnews or at Michelle Dewbs. And don't forget, if you haven't already, you can subscribe to us on YouTube, download our app. You can even listen to us on the radio, DAB+. So wherever you are very, very welcome tonight. So don't forget, the stories that we'll be discussing tonight is the latest grooming gang report. Labour, are they fit and proper opposition? And also, where do you stand on this new British Bill of Rights? They're the things that we'll be getting into tonight. I'll tell you what you've been getting into tonight, though. My lipstick. That's what's got you guys talking tonight. Jack, straight away, you were the first email. Jack says, love Michelle, but she's got lipstick on her teeth. Jack, you are the kind of guy that people need a friend like. Thank you. I wiped it off now. Thank you very much. Right, our top story tonight then, you guessed it, another day. And what did I say? I think it was about 2 days ago. I was saying exactly the same thing, another day and another report. These investigations into child sex abuse in Rotherham this time has found serious failures by South Yorkshire Police. You know, we go around in circles, don't we, on this topic? It seems like it does now. It feels like every other week there's one of these reports or one of these issues. And the problem with it all for me is the lack of accountability. We always learn lessons, don't we? We have these feelings and around we go. This report, it took years. I think it was about 8 years, cost about £6 million. And it follows the J report, which in 2014 said, get this, at least 1,400 children were raped and trafficked and abused in Rotherham between 1997 and 2013. Joining me now to discuss this is Maggie Oliver. She's a former detective constable who resigned from the police in protest at how some of these kind of issues were being handled. Maggie, good evening to you. Thank you very much for joining us. What's your reaction to this latest report today?
Hi, Michelle. I agree with every word you said. I could literally cut and paste this report and put either Rochdale or Rotherham or Oldham or Oxford. You know, every single one talks about the same failures, about children being failed, about the police failing in their duty. And in every single one, chief constables are wheeled out time and time again to say that things have changed, everything's better now. But I will tell you and your listeners, Michelle, that from my work in the Maggie Oliver Foundation, I know that is not the case. You know, we have two very distinct sides to the foundation. We have an emotional support service supporting victims who may have been let down in the past, but we also have a legal advocacy service which supports survivors but victims who are going to the police today wanting action taken about their abuse today. And the cases that we are dealing with now are overwhelming to the extent that my team is inundated every day with desperate people who are having the doors slammed in their faces today. And yet we know that time and time again, nobody is held to account. I see this as gross misconduct, as misconduct in a public office, gross criminal neglect. I want to see chief constables held to account, not just detectives on the ground or uniformed officers. For me, the book stops at the top. And, you know, chief constables know what is going on, and yet they appear to me to be political pawns who are there to protect the organisations in the same way that professional standards are, in the same way that normally the IOPC are. In this case, the IOPC have come out and said that there are gross failures. But I would suggest that's because with Rotherham, everybody knows that is the truth. But I would say that throughout the country, things are no different. We might be moving slowly in the right direction in that the public now know, Michelle, what is actually happening. But you go and speak to any victims today, and they will tell you that the service they are getting from the police, from the criminal system, the criminal justice system, is still not fit for purpose. And the abusers are getting away. Victims are still being treated with contempt. There is a lack of understanding of what this abuse does, and victims are still being blamed for their own abuse. The system is broken. We need a radical overhaul of the whole system, from the police to the CPS to the courts to the whole shebang. And, you know, I don't mince my words. I'm not here to make friends, Michelle. I am here to give the voice of victims credence, because we are listening to those victims in the foundation every single day. And I would say to any victim listening to this now, if you are having the door slammed in your face, come to the foundation and we will do our best to advocate for you. So that's where I come from on this, you know, another day, another report, millions of pounds wasted, when that money could have been put into, you know, improving policing, improving training, increasing the numbers. And chief constables, for me, should be shouting from the rooftops that that is what is needed, not pretending that these are problems of the past. They are very much problems of today, of the present. And we need those in positions of influence to shout that from the rooftops, and also to be held to account criminally, in my opinion, not allowed to slide out the door and retire when they know that the writing's on the wall, because all too often that is exactly what happens.
It does, you're right. I've actually got this report in front of me now. When I'm looking at the outcomes of this, Maggie, and you'll be familiar with this already, hence your comment, I'm sure, cases to answer where there's been an outcome where absolutely it was found that there was gross misconduct occurred on 3 separate occasions. There was no further action taken, despite there being findings of gross misconduct. Why? Because, as you've just said, individuals have retired. Another 4 cases to answer of misconduct. Again, no further action. Why? Because the individual retired. Maggie, it must be the ultimate smack in the face to a victim when it's been proven that somebody's done something wrong, gross misconduct in the case I've just mentioned there, or misconduct, and you're just allowed to go off and get your retirement, a nice, decent lump sum, a nice monthly ongoing fee with no consequence.
Yeah. Michelle, it makes my blood boil because, I was saying this in 2012 when I resigned. I feel like a broken record. Your viewers must be sick of the sight of me saying the same thing every time. But it's 10 years I've been saying this. And yet on Operation Span, we had the Chief Constable in Greater Manchester then dismissing me as a woman who had become too emotionally involved. I'd lost the plot. I'd been bereaved. Misogynistic words directed at me as a whistleblower and not addressing the issues that he knew were present then. We have GMP in special measures because they failed to record at least 80,000 crimes from, including victims of serious sexual abuse in 1 year alone. This is not a new problem. It is still ongoing. GMP are still in special measures. We are dealing with multiple cases from South Yorkshire Police today, many of which the victims are being failed in exactly the same way. Since January alone, we have referred 33 extremely serious cases to senior officers in GMP, and only one of those is being dealt with. This is a national scandal. It is still endemic, and victims are the losers. And if we don't get a grip of it, in 10 years' time, I'm still going to be saying the same things. Victims are still going to be being failed. We need leadership. We need accountability. We need senior officers standing in a court of law and being prosecuted for misconduct in a public office. Because if I was guilty of these failures, I would be standing there. They are misleading the public. They are covering up a failing system. And another report is saying the same thing. We need an independent body that investigates complaints, not professional standards, who time and time again protect the organisation because that is what they are paid to do. And normally that is what the IOPC do. And I'm sad to say that from my dealings with Op Hydrant, they are in that same category. We are trying at the foundation to open up dialogue with police forces. The dialogue is actually beginning, but what we are not seeing is the dialogue and the promises converting into action and change.
Indeed.
And, I'm not going away until that happens.
Well, Maggie, unfortunately, but fortunately, if you know what I mean, I'm sure we'll be speaking again soon because this doesn't seem like it's going to be getting resolved anytime soon. As always, thank you for all the work that you do. And we both share the same feelings. All of this is an absolute disgrace. Maggie Oliver, thank you for your time. Kelvin, your thoughts?
Well, two significant thoughts. One is, obviously, the police. It's an absolute disgrace. I mean, this is 16 years of not doing anything. My other issue is this. There is clearly, in one of those examples that you could have read out there, one father was denied the attacker being arrested by the police because the police turned around to him and said that there would be racial tensions in the event that the arrest took place. Well, when you look at this, there were 1,400 young white girls attacked, groomed or trafficked by a collection of Pakistani men, mainly kind of driven by paedophilia in some way. Why is it that the police feel that they can't arrest these people? What is it that's stopping them? Because were it an ordinary, I don't know, supposing this happened in Kingston or Weybridge or Brighton, They wouldn't think twice about doing it. So what is it about the colour of your skin in some of these towns in the north which seems to stop the police doing their proper deeds?
But do you still think we're in that zone, though, Kelvin? Because some of these people have been arrested, haven't they? Some of these people have been locked up.
There's been about 12. There's been 1,400 attacks, according to the reports, right? And about 12 people are currently in jail. Yes, they've got 22 years. One got 35 years. Some of them scarpered back to Pakistan, right? Is that an appropriate arrest relationship? I don't think it is. What is it that does the colour of an attacker's skin in these towns, Rotherham, Oldham, Rochdale, does that mean that they can get away with things that people of another colour skin can't do?
The other thing is it's still going on. I mean, that's what's appalling. I mean, just a few months ago, some Conservative councillors in Rotherham have brought forth this report saying that these young girls are being given phones, taken off late at night by older Asian men, taken to, they name, a sex shop and a petrol station, forced to have sex, and then trafficked all over the north of England. So this is still happening. And the other thing that I find seriously concerning is that you have, I think it was in 2015, you had a case where you had two councillors and a constable all had up because they were actually working together with the grooming gangs and were having sex with the girls, and the constable was actually even giving information to the grooming gangs. Now, that's just, I feel, the tip of the iceberg. That had clearly, because of all this cover-up, all that has happened, that the collusion must have been much deeper than that, just one case.
Jo?
Well, I think Maggie Oliver deserves more plaudits and medals than she's already had for being so brave to call it out in the first place. It's shocking that she says it's still going on, as Harriet's just said, and it's an absolute, utter disgrace. And where are the police ever held accountable for anything? I mean, we saw the report, the J report, that talked about the failings within the council social services. And we learned earlier this week that one of the groomers, one of the perpetrators, was actually a welfare officer within the council. And we also know from that report, exactly as Kelvin's just said, that there was this fear of being called out for being racist without actually dealing with a real problem. But the real problem, right at the bottom of this, is not believing the victims, because they were young, they were vulnerable, they were girls, they were children. If anybody could say to a child, you consented to this, then you are condoning rape.
Yeah, I think...
And I think, you know, we saw it with Hillsborough, we've seen it with various incidents in the Met. If the police are going to continue to police this country by consent, they really do need to get their act together.
Yeah, and I think there's a class element to this as well, because a lot of these girls were in children's homes, for example. And by the way, just for the record, we're talking about kids as young as 11, 12 here.
Yeah. Well, under the age of consent.
Yeah,
it was illegal,
quite significantly.
what was happening.
Yeah, quite significantly. Sturvewood, by the way, Operation Sturvewood, apparently this is the single largest law enforcement investigation into this kind of exploitation and abuse. So far, it's seen 20 sex offenders convicted and jailed for a total of 256 years. More than 200 people have been arrested or attended a police station voluntarily. That's the stats from that particular operation. Where do you stand on this? I do find it quite peculiar. I mean, we had, if you're a regular viewer to this show, you will recall Monday, I think it was, literally a couple of days ago, we had an independent expert on in this field, and he started off by saying, if you recall that interview, you know, Michelle, I want to reassure you and your viewers that this is not kind of a serious concern anymore. It's more of a historical thing.
But I mean, that's absolute rubbish, and we know that. And unless people are actually taken to court and are made to pay, whether that's by, you know, the trashing of their reputation or going to prison or whatever it is, they will just walk away. And as you said, and as Maggie said, they walk away into retirement.
Should retirement be a get-out-of-jail card? I mean, just because you're retired doesn't make you suddenly immune. You're allowed to do every kind of illegal act. Why should that be? Why should they not be prosecuted?
Because I bet you that
even when they're retired.
But I expect the records are missing. But I mean, we've seen it, we've heard it over and over again. We've heard it with Stephen Lawrence, we've heard it with Hillsborough, we've heard it with this. We hear it and we will carry on hearing it because nobody is taking any action. And what has the Home Secretary got to say about that, by the way?
Let me just say, I am not at all in any way, shape or form hostile to the police. I think they have a bloody awful job, which they do by and large to the best of their ability. But I just wonder whether when they get caught up in these kind of racial areas, whether actually the liberal aspect of policing dominates the correct thing to be done. Because there has to be an explanation, which it wouldn't happen, as I say, it wouldn't happen in Cornwall, it wouldn't happen in Brighton, but it seems to happen in northern towns where there are a lot of Asian men.
Yeah, indeed. A point that's coming through thick and fast on the email, by the way, Martin, Pam, you just messaged literally just a second saying the same thing as well, is, you know, you're all talking about the authorities, Michelle, you're all saying, but what about the parents in all of this? Why isn't anyone referencing them? I suspect the thing here is a lot of these children were in children's homes, so make of that what you will. I would say that those parents, for whatever reason, have obviously failed those children. And if that's been the case, we can all sit and look at them. But the nuts and bolts of it is, once that's happened, then it is actually the jobs of the authorities to protect those children. That is their safety net. The police, the social workers, all the rest of it. If your parents are wrong uns, they've failed you, you know, that's almost gone in a way. And now it is, fortunately or unfortunately, whatever way you look at it, it's the job of the authorities to pick up those kids and care for them. And they have very sadly let them down. Now, I'm going to move on. I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk to you about politics. Whatever side of the fence you sit on, we should all agree that an effective opposition is an absolute essential must. Do we have that when it comes to the Labour Party? I'll have that and your responses to the first topic in just a couple of minutes.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you. And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Coming up on The Mark Steyn Show, a new report outlining the serious failings during the Rotherham child sex scandal has been released, but survivor Sammy Woodhouse will be asking why it fails to hold any individual accountable. As the floodgates appear to be opening for the vaccine injured and bereaved, Virginia Lamb will share her ordeal after she lost the ability to walk. Plus, we'll be taking the spin out of the news with our statsman Jamie Jenkins and editor of The Spectator Australia, Alex Marshall. All that and more on The Mark Steyn Show tonight from 8 o'clock.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry. A quick reminder as to who is keeping me company until 7 o'clock tonight. We've got former editor of The Sun, Kelvin McKenzie, political commentator Joe Phillips, and journalist and author Harriet Sargent. You guys have been in touch, lots of you, about that last topic about the grooming gangs, the historical child sexual exploitation. Bill says, Michelle, I'm absolutely sick of hearing this same old sentence that we're going to learn lessons. He says it's time top officials are dismissed without their pensions, etc., for not doing their jobs properly. Got to say, Bill, I don't think you'll find much kind of opposition to that viewpoint here, which leads me nicely onto opposition generally. Do you see what I did there? Every single... Thank you, Kelvin. You're appreciating it. Thank you.
Honestly, a great line. Great segue. Segue of the year.
Thank you. Yeah, I might get a BAFTA off the back of that one. Right, my point is, every single government needs a good, strong, decent opposition. But Sir Keir Starmer's reaction this week to the rail strikes is just the latest example of him sitting on the fence. Some people call Keir Starmer the leader of no opposition, which at first, I've got to say, I thought was a bit harsh. But now I'm not so sure. It's all got me thinking, and I'm asking you tonight, what is the point now of the Labour Party? Are they an effective opposition? Are they doing the job that they're supposed to be doing? To discuss this, I'm joined by the Labour MP and Shadow Minister for Immigration, Stephen Kinnick. Good evening to you. I'll put that question straight to you. Are the Labour Party an effective opposition?
Absolutely. We are holding the government to account, pointing out their failures across the board, and also coming forward with clear, compelling policies, such as the windfall tax on oil and gas companies to pay for reduced energy bills, such as the removal of VAT from energy bills, such as a proper industrial policy to get our economy firing on all cylinders, rebooting our manufacturing sector in particular. And the government's not really coming forward with anything apart from lots of divisive issues, whether it's their position on the rail strikes completely failing to get the talks moving, position on the Northern Ireland Protocol, the Rwanda deportations. They're just looking for opportunities to divide the country rather than pulling us all together, getting us actually working again after the pandemic, and also dealing with our international partners in a more constructive way. So we need an opposition that is strong and united. That's what we are on the Labour benches, and we're ready for the general election, and we're ready to form that next Labour government.
See, Stephen, I've got to be honest. You say that the Tories are trying to divide the country and that Labour, you're a very strong, united party. To me, I don't think you seem united at all. In fact, I would question whether or not you think people really, truly know what the Labour Party even stands for anymore. I'll pick the most recent example of these strikes. You're supposed to be the party of the workers. The workers are now on picket lines, and Labour Party, to me, don't seem to know if you're coming or going. Your leader's saying to you, don't get on those picket lines. 20-odd of you are saying, no thanks, and you're getting on the picket lines anyway. Who are you as a party?
Well, the job of the Parliamentary Labour Party is to focus on the government and make it absolutely clear that the reason these strikes are happening is because the government wants them to happen. Totally failing to sit down and get the train operators and the trade unions talking. And without the government there, those talks are not going to succeed. Grant Shapps knows that. Boris Johnson knows that. And in terms of where we stand as a party on this, it's absolutely clear that we support the right to strike. Workers have got to stand up for their rights, and sometimes that means as a last resort going on strike. But our job in Parliament is to keep the focus on the government, and that is what we're doing. And I think that is really cutting through very clearly. If you see the fact that the recent opinion polls, I think, showing that the government isn't getting this right. And what is absolutely extraordinary is today it's emerged that the government wants to lift the cap on bankers' bonuses. So whilst they're preaching to those hard-working people who got our country through the pandemic that they have to exercise pay restraint, they're saying to the bankers, noses in the trough, lads, keep going, keep raking it in, you'll be fine as long as you, by the way, keep donating to the Conservative Party. It's rank hypocrisy, and Boris Johnson had no answer to that at Prime Minister's questions today.
Stephen, I think we'll agree to disagree. I mean, you think it's clear what the Labour Party stand for. I'm someone that was born and bred Labour, and to me it's absolutely not clear, but we'll park that. We'll agree to disagree on that one. You know, Shadow Immigration Minister, it would be remiss of me not to ask you about what's going on in the Channel. Do you think we've got an emergency situation right now when it comes to these Channel crossings?
Yes, it's absolutely awful that people are making these very dangerous journeys and risking their lives. But the government's Rwanda deportation plan is not going to deter them. There isn't the capacity in Rwanda to take anything like the numbers that might actually act as a deterrent. What we need to do is actually sit down with our the European governments and the EU and get a proper returns agreement in place, and then actually start processing the asylum applications that are here. We've got 37,000 asylum seekers languishing in hotels in this country, costing the British taxpayer £4 million a day. So instead of chasing headlines, Priti Patel should actually be doing the hard work, making the hard yards and solving the problem in a way that it actually is going to work, rather than having this Rwanda policy which is unworkable, extortionately expensive. That flight the other day cost the taxpayer £500,000 and is simply not the right way to deal with a problem, offloading it onto a developing country 4,000 miles away, which itself has a dubious record on human rights.
But Stephen, your idea has been tried, hasn't it? You say that the government should sit down with the Europeans and try and thrash this out. We've tried that. We've spent millions and millions of pounds with the French trying to create solutions there. None of it works. Nearly 12,000 people now have crossed the Channel already this year, which is double where we were this time last year. So the suggestions that you're giving us, they've been tried, they haven't worked. Rwanda is now a last resort.
Well, the other issue is that the government's closed down all the safe and legal routes. They've closed down the Syria resettlement scheme. They're only now getting the Afghanistan citizens resettlement scheme off the ground. We've got 12,000 Afghans who served British forces in Afghanistan, put their lives on the line for us, languishing in hotels here. So, you know, what we've got is a situation where the solutions haven't been tried properly. The fact is that because of Boris Johnson's botched Brexit deal, we left the EU without a successor to the Dublin III regulation. I know it's hard for Boris Johnson and Priti Patel to actually have that constructive dialogue with other governments in Europe because they've burned so many bridges, but that's the reality of international diplomacy. It's a tough message, but you've got to actually sit down, talk, be constructive, rather than chasing headlines and throwing red meat at the Tory backbenches in order to try and keep Boris Johnson in his job. They're putting their party before the country. It's undermining the national interest, and it's the opposite of patriotism.
Yeah, Stephen, I do agree with some of what you're saying there in terms of the medium to longer term strategy. But in the here and now, we have got hundreds of people per day crossing this channel right now. So we don't have these safe routes, we don't have this, we don't have that. The conversations haven't worked. So in the here and now, how would you stop this? The people getting on the boats tomorrow, this afternoon, this evening, how would you stop it right now?
Right now, invest in more decision makers so that we can get the asylum process actually working in this country. Asylum application processing has dropped by 50% since Priti Patel became the Home Secretary. You've got to sit down with the Europeans and talk through these issues. You've got to recognise that the safe and legal routes have to be there, because the vast majority of people coming at the moment are actually coming from Afghanistan, and we've seen what the Taliban
But Stephen, this is all medium term. I'm asking you in the here and now. Stephen, that's not answering the here and now. I understand what you're saying, but in the here and the now, tomorrow, you're going to have hundreds more people getting on a boat. How would you stop them today, tomorrow?
Well, we were told that the mere announcement of the Rwanda plan would deter people from crossing the channel. There's absolutely no evidence whatsoever that that is happening. They're not going to be deterred by that for the reasons I've already explained. So Einstein said that the definition of insanity is when you keep doing the same thing and expecting different results. If this plan isn't working, then you've got to actually do the hard graft. Some of the stuff, it's not exciting, it doesn't get you headlines on the front page of the Daily Mail, but it's actually the only stuff that works. Because if you look at why have we had such an uptick in the channel crossings, it's as soon as all the people smugglers have realised that we didn't have the a successor to Dublin III. So that some years ago we were sending 10,000 people whose asylum applications were unsuccessful back to the places that they'd come from. That number has dropped to just 800 last year. So, you know, the answers are there in the numbers, but I'm afraid that because Priti Patel wants to chase headlines, she's come up with this policy which isn't actually going to work, but which is, you know, throwing, as I say, throwing red meat to the Conservative backbenchers.
Yeah, I've got to say, I'm not particularly convinced myself that these traffickers are sitting there studying things like Dublin conventions, and that's why they're doing it. I think the person are doing it because they know they're going to get a decent hotel at the end of it, etc.
They 100% are. They're very well informed. They know exactly. It's their business. It's their evil, horrible business. If we had a proper security partnership with Europol and with the French authorities, that would work as well. But this government's burned all the bridges. But I can tell you categorically that the people smugglers are absolutely on top of what's going on. And once they realised that once they got people to the UK, we had no way of sending them anywhere, that's when you see the massive increase in the boats coming across the channel. It's not a coincidence.
Stephen, I could talk to you all night, but for time reasons, I must leave it there. Thank you very much for your time. Joe Phillips, your take on this, because I have to say, I did try multiple times. I don't actually think, from what I just heard there, that the Labour Party have any idea of what they would do in the here and now to stop this. It's all fascinating talking about this regulation and that and that. Today, what would you do?
In the here and now, right this minute, there are probably people waiting for darkness to fall to come across the channel this evening.
Oh, I don't even think they wait for darkness, Joe.
But
I think they care.
I think the point that Stephen Kinnick made, and I think the problem is with Boris Johnson, he has treated politics and being in government as a great big game. He has no plan. He has a lot of slogans. He has a lot of gimmicks. He's surrounded himself with a cabinet of stunning mediocrity who are also out for the headlines. Nothing is ever followed through. Nothing is thought through. So Stephen Kinnick is absolutely right. We had nothing in place to replace Dublin 3. The Rwanda idea is absolutely bonkers. It's impractical, it's inhumane, and it's incredibly expensive.
What's inhumane about it? I find it's such a peculiar pushback. What is inhumane about putting someone on a plane and sending them to a nice, safe country?
It's not a safe country. It's a country with very dubious human rights record. We're taking refugees from Rwanda in exchange. If we were processing people, and you know, as he said, and as many people have said, what about the people in Afghanistan who supported our troops during the time we were there? They are sitting, waiting. What about the people in Ukraine that we said, oh, come here, we'll give you homes, we'll open our hearts and our homes to you when the war broke out in February? They're not being processed, but I think lots of them are. Not as quickly as they should be, Michelle.
I have to, so I can.
Oh, well, good
I have
for you.
actual evidence that they are
great.
coming from
My
house.
My ex-wife has a couple. There's almost anybody who actually wants to have a Ukrainian
You can. It's
Ukrainian
not that
refugee.
difficult.
Well, that's great.
That's
good to hear. Churches.
I think you're missing the main point here, which I've never seen addressed by a politician very well, Stephen Kinnick, which is that there are millions of people under the UN Convention who have a perfect right to come and live here. And what are we going to do? I mean, we talk about safe passages for millions of people. This is craziness.
But I think the original topic of the conversation was about opposition.
Yes, that's true.
Because we have been round the houses on
this.
immigration, and we can go round the houses again on that, and I don't suppose we'll agree this time anymore.
You've not been round the houses. I've not heard your view on it. Go on,
my view is quite simple. I quite admire Kinnock batting it all away and saying we get friendly with those European people, this problem will disappear. That is crap with a capital K, to be honest. The reality was that if Rwanda had happened, nobody is coming across the channel. Nobody is coming across the channel to land here to end up 4,000 miles away, possibly back towards the area that they may have come from. We have a massive problem. The whole of the Middle East and much of Africa wants to head to Western Europe. The French, Germans, nobody is going to help us out. My own argument would be we should take some of our troops and we should head towards France and say we are going to actually invade the northern sands of France and shoot dead the smugglers.
What?
I would be much more in favour of some kind of violent answer. The idea
That's
that
a bit
Kinnock...
extreme.
No, the alternative... Remember, Kinnock actually got some of this right. 30+ thousand here, costing us 4 million a day. Double that.
Because
8 million
they're not
a day,
being processed.
67,000, multiply that by 10, the whole country is going to sink. We think we've got problems about housing now. You think we've got problems about education? Well, you say all this. You yourself were saying, look at the way that it's doubled and trebled and quadrupled.
Right.
So what are you going to do?
We've
then?
got
you're going to be one of those that says, oh, please don't come. Is there any way I can help you? What are you going to do? What are you going to do, Michelle? You asked Stephen what he was... Go on then, what would you do?
Luckily for you, I'm quite a smart woman and I've got a little plan.
That's to be tested.
I'll tell you what I would do. I would do a few different things, right? I'd say, first and foremost, this is an emergency situation.
It is a crisis.
A crisis. So then I would look at what kind of law. There must be something somewhere, some kind of legal thing that I could put in place that overlays on all of what I would call business as usual law. So all of this, court of this and court of that operates on your standard daily things. That's point one. I'd be investigating that over there. In the meantime, while I'm doing that, I'd have people on the beaches in France with massive megaphones. If you attempt to make this crossing, you will not be granted asylum. No ifs, buts or maybes. This is not a recognised route. You will not be granted asylum. So I'd make sure that that message was being communicated loud and clear in whatever language it needed to be communicated in point one. Then I would probably explore some form of turn back. I would look at, like what they did in Australia with Operation Sovereign Borders. I would make sure I've explored that. Well, it did for a period of time. I would have some kind of turn-back operation, and I would probably have the Navy
turn them back where? Towards France. Push them back onto the beaches of France.
You cannot
What, with the French pushing them towards us? So you worry about my war, about me shooting smugglers.
I've got a solution.
No, but that's not a solution.
You thought I was just going to look at you all gormless and
we are talking
about Dublin, whatever, didn't you?
We are talking about people. We're talking about human beings who are fleeing the most appalling situation.
Let me finish. I sat in on the Home Office. I did a whole investigation of immigration, and I sat in on interviews with so-called asylum seekers, and it was very clear what was going on. So I would debate with you.
Okay, well, you have.
How many are?
Well, many are.
Young men, 98% are young men.
Stop. I'm supposed to be talking about a completely different subject when I come back after the break, but instead, I might even come back and return to this one. So
can we talk about the opposition?
Yeah, of course you can, but not yet, because we're going to go to a break. Someone's got to pay my salary with these adverts, so let me take the break. We'll come back, we'll pick up where we left off.
You're being paid by these adverts, you're in big trouble.
I'll see you in a couple of minutes. I might kick him off in the meantime.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio. On digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you. And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was, in fact, a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs and Kurt with me, Michelle Dewberry. I can tell you our conversations rumbled on through the break, so they did, keeping me company. A quick reminder, in case you've just tuned in, we've got Kelvin Mackenzie, who's the former editor of The Sun. We've got political commentator Joe Phillips and journalist and author Harriet Sargent. Nigel Farage joins us at 7 o'clock. Nigel, good evening to you. What have you got coming up?
Good evening. Well, two big debates tonight. The first is Dominic Raab, a British Bill of Rights. He tells the House of Commons that with this, we can override the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg. I don't believe a word of it. We'll debate and discuss that. And interestingly, with inflation at 9.1%, benefits set to rise by the same amount, but wages not to rise, I'm going to start a debate tonight that I'm going to go drill down on. We've got 5.3 million adults of working age not working. Are we now in a position where it's better to be out of work on benefits than to work for low pay? I'm worried that may be true.
Mm-hmm.
Nigel, I've got Kelvin Mackenzie in my left ear, chipping up, agreeing with you, giving you the thumbs up, saying yes. He was saying to me a minute ago, ask Nigel what he thinks of this and ask Nigel what he thinks of that. I said, no, I won't. We'll say thanks to Nigel, say goodbye to Nigel, and I'll pick back up with these guys.
Thank
See you at 7, Nigel. Right, where were we before the break?
Well, we were having an argument about immigration, but the original question was actually about whether we've got an effective opposition. So you've done an interview with Stephen Kinnick, which you disagree with or don't feel it answered the question.
He didn't answer my question at all. He just kept repeating medium, long-term strategies.
So that comes back to the original question, which is, do we have an effective opposition?
And the answer to that is no.
Well,
I tell you what, in my view, it's great. The Labour Party is made up of two parties, and as you've seen, Corbyn is not even in the party anymore. It was only half an hour ago. He was the leader of the damn place. Now he can't get in, even by begging and pleading and sending rather large cheques in, right? Now we've got another guy, some kind of lawyer, who always looks to me as though his fingers got stuck in the light bulb somehow. He looks vaguely shocked. He doesn't work as the leader of the Labour Party, so they should give him the dumpo, and then we'd have had 3 leaders in a couple of years now. And he obviously believes that he himself is going to get slung out because, according to a story I read in the Sunday Times, he's called together possible competitors in the event he gets slung out over Beergate and said, I want you to make sure that you all stick to my policies. Well, they're all going to say to him, oh, of course we will do.
Well,
they're never going to do
Kelvin,
that.
you and I were having this conversation before we came on air. It makes perfect sense to me that having said, if I am fined, if I get a fixed penalty notice for Beergate, so-called, I will resign, as would Angela Rayner. It makes perfect sense. And as I said to you out there, it's a little bit like, well, I've been to the doctors, the prognosis isn't very good, but let's have a conversation now about who gets what and juggle it
Joe
up.
Phillips, you can't say with a straight face that Keir Starmer stood there all noble and said, if I get a fixed penalty notice, I'll leave. Because there was no nobility in that. The reason that he made that claim...
Well, he will do.
No, yeah, but you know as well as I know, the reason that he stood there and said that...
was to call out Boris Johnson.
No, was because he knows full well that the Durham Police Force, it's not their policy. They don't issue retrospective fixed penalty notices for COVID offences. So he was very careful with his wording. He did not say, if I'm found guilty of this, then I'll resign. What he specifically and clearly said...
If I get a fixed penalty
If I
notice.
get a fixed penalty
That's
notice,
right.
I'll resign. Because he knows
exactly
he's going to
same,
get one.
But that's exactly the same as Boris Johnson got, was a fixed penalty notice, who refused to resign.
Different police force with different
In fact,
rules.
I tell you what, in fact, the Lib Dems is the only leader that won't have received a fixed penalty notice shortly.
I know. Well, but yeah.
That's poor, though. They're not even enjoying themselves in the Liberal Party.
Parties.
I find
Too
that
small
very
a party to party.
I have to say, I feel quite... I know this may come as a shock, but I actually feel quite sympathetic to Paul Keir Starmer.
So do I.
Because he's up against the most left-wing Conservative party there has ever been. I mean, Boris Johnson, if there's a problem, he just...
Throws money at it.
Throws money at it, chucks money at it. And then Keir Starmer says, I've got an idea, let's put money. And Boris says, yes, actually, let's put more. Let's put more money. And so what is he meant to do to differentiate himself from Boris? I mean, the only way he can differentiate himself from Boris is actually to become a proper Conservative. Well, have a smaller government and less spending.
I think also, for 2 years, or nearly 2 years, we had COVID and all that entailed, and all the opposition parties. I mean, Parliament wasn't sitting, really. and all the opposition parties were, by and large, supportive of what needed to be done, whether it was closing shops, closing schools, etc., etc. So you can't start, in the middle of a pandemic, you can't start saying, hey, we've got a great policy on this, that or the other.
No, but you could have held them to account. But let's make it about current day. Let's not go about
But you see, I think this
current day with these strikes, Jo.
Yeah.
I think that the problem with Keir Starmer, to me, is a fence-sit middleman. He wants to be all things to all people. That's why he has these silly conversations about, you can't say a woman's not got a penis, because he don't want to offend a certain minority group, because he wants to be everything to everyone. You can't be. That's a fool's errand. It's a fast track to failure if you try to do that. He should sit. If I was Keir Starmer, luckily for everyone, I am not. I would sit there and go, right, I'm going to go hard or I'm going to go home. This is my chance to put a stake in the ground. These strikes, you know what? I'm on the side of the unions. If you guys want to get on the pickets, you get yourself on that picket. We stand by these workers. No. We stand by these unions. This is us. This is Labour. We're in with the unions. And then you stand for something. Yes, you will alienate people.
No,
so what?
I completely agree. He called that one wrongly because the Labour Party grew out of the trade union movement, and you cannot tell MPs...
But they're trying not to be in... The whole point about that, there is no such thing as a trade union movement.
No.
It exists very narrowly in state industries.
It exists in the heads of the Daily Mail talking about union barons. Well, they wouldn't even be crofters, the number of people in unions these days. And I think, it's this harking back to trying to recreate the 70s, where Labour's in hock to the unions, let's bring back imperial measures, let's deport all immigrants.
Yeah, but basically, we're talking about Labour, we're not talking about, this is sort of Labour policies, and I think he's got, again, I feel sorry for him because he's got himself in this peculiar position. You said, OK, he should be backing the unions, which is one argument, but these unions, these tube and train drivers are actually making a very reasonable amount of money.
No, it's not train drivers. They're not the same union, Harriet.
No, but the tube drivers, I'm particularly worked up about...
Don't even think about it. ASLEF will be all over this.
They're all £54,000 a year. And, they're stopping. I'm talking particularly about London now, because I know a number of low-paid workers. Yes, but they are stopping low-paid workers in the hospitality industry, students and children. Surely, what are we saying? That Keir only supports well-paid workers? You have to be earning over £40,000 a year before Keir Starmer's going to support you. This is not what Labour should be.
That's not what he's saying. I just want to read you this quote.
But this is the position he's taking.
Well, it isn't like that.
But it is. He's
where has he said he's only supporting
people who are much
40,
better paid than the people they are making suffering?
Yeah, but
sorry, that doesn't make any sense.
What you mean is we've got to be careful with this, because what's happened a lot in the media is people have taken the average salary of a train driver
and then they're not on strike.
Well, no, you say that they're not on strike.
But they're not members...
No, so you've got ASLEF, which is
and they're not on strike.
By the way, they're even worse than the
But they're not on strike at the moment.
The drivers strikes are coming. They've been balloted. They're in process.
But they are not on the strikes this week.
No, they're not on this week's strikes. No,
exactly.
And it is a bit misrepresentative to talk about the RMT guys as being predominantly train drivers. Then in that is a bit misrepresentative.
These are ticket office people. These are
they're cleaners.
There are people on very low pay. I just want to read this, which I thought was a really good description.
And
this is from The Guardian, from Raphael Beer.
The Guardian, right?
Listen. Starmer deserves credit for taking the capsized vessel of his party, straightening the rudder and getting it buoyant again, but even his supporters worry that he is now becalmed. I think that's quite a good description. But we'll see what happens in tomorrow's by-elections.
Well, there you go. You tell me. Have we got an effective opposition in this country for now? That's all we've got time for. Many people, by the way, Kelvin, want you to be the Prime Minister.
I'm not surprised.
Oh.
I'm busy at the moment.
Lord, washing your hair. Gosh, I'll make no comment on that one, except to say thank you to my panel. Have yourself a good evening at home, and I'll see you tomorrow.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio. On digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
and we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast.